What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And of course today we've got S-Snake. Yeah, so I actually did end up pulling this unit. I ended up doing one more multi on the TM banner, and she decided to show up, which is kind of wild. Was not expecting that at all, but hey, you know, we moved, we got pretty lucky, so that's awesome. So this character is a bit of an interesting one. Of course, it is an anniversary exclusive, so don't expect this character to return on a bunch of treasure map banners moving forward. This character is only going to be available on worldwide anniversary banners at the end of February, likely repeat TM banners moving forward. So around this time next year, this character will return. This character should also be back during the May 2025 official anniversary, and then it will also come back during the November half anniversary. So there aren't going to be too many opportunities to get your hands on S-Snake, but yeah, she's an interesting legend overall. She definitely has a lot of positives, but there are definitely some things I'm not the biggest fan of either. So let's go ahead and jump into this one, kind of break her down. In terms of what the content we're doing today, we've got two different clips. We've got Doflamingo 2 and we have Revolutionary Army 2, you know, the GARP challenges. So we're going to be using double S-Snake because even though it is, at least in modern content, it definitely feels like running hybrid captains is like the way to go. But with the way that S-Snake is kind of designed, it definitely feels like it is much more potent to actually run double S-Snake. And I'll talk more about that as we go along here. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and let's start talking about the character's captain ability. So S-Snake, being a strength fighter shooter, her captain ability will give -1 to your cooldowns at the start of the quest, but also give -1 to super switch gauge. So that's a really cool mechanic, and I guess it does make sense considering, you know, you got Lucci and not Lucci, sorry, it's Kaku and Zora that came out with this batch, and obviously has a super switch. But even if there's other characters that come out moving forward, you know, being able to get -1 to the switch gauge is actually really cool, and it does mean if you run double S-Snake, you do get -2 to your switch gauge. So it does allow you to use those super switches much faster. And because this character does give that -1 to switch gauge, I do feel like this is going to be a pretty decent captain to be using in like other treasure maps moving forward, especially with the other effects in the captain, which we'll get to in a moment. Another ability this character has is that when you start the quest for 20 turns, it adds 100 times this character's attack on top of tap timing bonus damage. So it's a really interesting ability there. It allows you to kind of get through enemies that have like relatively high defense. Just adding a bit of additional damage on top of it allows you to just kill stages much faster, at least like the mobs on earlier stages a lot easier. But the main reason why this character does this is to supplement the special ability, which we'll get to in a little bit. So, you know, you add the tap timing bonus damage, and then in terms of the multipliers, so this character provides a fighter and shooter 1.35 times health boost, which is pretty decent. And then also, for fighter and shooter characters, you get a 5 times attack boost, but it can scale all the way up to 5.75, so long as you continuously hit your perfects. So the way that this works is it's based on tap timing. So the first character that attacks gets a 5 times boost. If you hit a good, it's 5.25. If you hit a great, it's going to be 5.5. And then if you hit a perfect, it's going to be 5.75 times attack. So pretty decent overall, very easily achievable damage multipliers from S-Snake's captain ability. The only issue that may arise is that if you have to perform a certain tap timing to get around a certain gimmick, like if your specials are locked and you need to hit a good, great, or whatever it is in order to break that, or if the enemy has a barrier based on good or great, that can make things a little bit more difficult. This character does have barrier pierce, which is kind of nice in that regard, but it is only based if you're above 50% HP. If you're below that 50% threshold, you lose the barrier pierce, which is terrible. I really hate the fact that they continuously do that. And then the main ability, the utility piece in the captain ability, which is really neat. Okay, first of which, it does give recovery and tandem thoughts as matching, which is a nice touch. But the more important effect is that it removes this character's Bind, Special Bind, Despair, Special Reverse, and Paralysis completely off this character's own kit. So that's really cool because it means that if you run double S-Snake, the entire top row is essentially untouchable. Of course, you can still be blown away, you can still be dealt like orb debuffs and stuff like that, but essentially this character is like pretty much borderline untouchable as a captain, which is great. Very reminiscent of characters of past, like Legend Alba when he first came out. Very, very similar ability, and that character is really strong. Being able to just basically avoid a bunch of debuffs as the captain really makes a big difference, because when you are running double S-Snake, you literally don't need to worry about Despair at all. Of course, if you do get captain switched, that can be a bit of an issue, but still, there are ways around that. You know, your entire top row being able to avoid Special Bind is really neat. Unfortunately, this character isn't able to fully abuse the fact that this character is essentially immune to most debuffs in the game. One of the big things about Alba and why he is as good as what he is because he does resist all of these debuffs as a captain, and then in his special ability, he provides -2 turns of cooldown, special bind removal on top of everything else that he does. So being able to resist the debuffs and then remove them off of the rest of the crew is a really big deal. Unfortunately, S-Snake doesn't really get access to that, which is the biggest downfall, I think, in terms of the usability of this character overall. So moving on from that, this character does have an EX superclass, which is pretty cool. So it actually will give buffs to both Super Fighter and Super Shooter, which is pretty neat. The ability itself, in order to activate it, you do need 2 of the listed characters, which is a bit of a downfall. Requiring 2 units is always a bit harsh, but of course it's an EX Super. I guess it's a little bit, you know, understandable. The positive thing is that you can actually use it as a crewmate, which is pretty cool. Especially with like the free-to-play S Shark that came out recently. That character has the ability to become the captain, and being able to still use this while even like a captain shift or a captain swap is activated is a pretty powerful effect. The list of characters that are available for the EX Super is actually pretty respectable, like nothing really too crazy. Like it actually is pretty easy to fulfill this, but you gotta remember that S-Snake is a fighter and a shooter captain, so if you do opt to use her as a captain, you do need to run these units that are also, you know, fighter and shooter. And we'll get to another ability in a moment, but you know, there is a part in her special which actually boosts strength, dex, and quick. So there can be a little bit of awkward overlap where you need characters that are fighter and shooter but are also strength, dex, and quick. It can get a little funky, but at least Monkey D. Luffy is one of the applicable characters, and because she requires fighter characters for her captain ability, like, yeah, it's pretty easy to fulfill the Monkey D. Luffy component of this character's kit. And then you've got other characters like Boa Hancock, you've got all of the Vegapunks active, Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy, as well as any of the other Seraphims. So yeah, it's pretty easily activatable, all things considered. And the effect itself is actually pretty good. Being able to remove 1 turn of enemies' damage nullification is very powerful. There's not a lot of characters in the game that just remove damage nullification, so being able to do that is very good. On top of that, giving a full board of tandem slots that goes through block, always going to be a really cool effect. The fact that this happens via the EX Super is also really good because it is uninterruptible by the enemy's effect, so I really like that she has that ability. And on top of that, she also provides a resistance down on the enemies for strength, dex, and quick of a value of 25%. A 25% resistance down is nice. It's literally just a 25% bonus damage, right, to strength, dex, and quick units, which is very good. And then also fighters become super fighters, and then shooters become super shooter. So that is one of the most powerful EX Supers you can get, where 2 classes become super versions of themselves. Comparatively to, I think it was Lucci Kaku with their EX Super, it would provide super dex and super quick, because characters can't have 2 typings at the same time, whereas, you know, with super class, characters can have 2 classes at once. So being able to provide the 1.2 stats to fighters and shooters means that S-Snake herself receives a 1.44 times stat bonus when you activate her EX Super, which is a pretty big, sizable increase. So the EX Super, all things considered, is actually quite a good ability. Let's go ahead and talk about the special ability of S-Snake. So S-Snake has a couple of different components here. The first of which is that it does inflict love status on each enemy for 8 combo hits. So the Love status is part of the reason why a lot of people are predicting that this character is going to perform well in the most recent treasure map up against Esper/Vegapunk. We kind of theorized that the effect here from the Love status is going to negate some abilities from activating, so we'll have to wait and see exactly what is planned and how the actual battle's going to go. But the Love status in most cases is pretty redundant because you're just going to be using the special for mostly damage. You're not particularly going to be using her special for a defensive component where you're trying to stall out the enemy. I doubt that's going to be the case, but hey, she has Love status, which goes in line with the theming of the character. On top of that, this character also removes defense up by 7 turns, which is never a bad ability to have. However, it is a little weird that this character has this, considering the most recent characters that have just released in this batch, talking about characters such as, you know, the Zoro and Kaku character that came out. That character with their super switch ability can provide defense down through immunity, so it is strange that this character comes out directly after them, which just removes defense up. Like, it's a little weird. And then even like stretching all the way out to the New Year's banner that came out a couple months back, you know, that Monkey D. Luffy with his special ability can remove enemies' defense up completely. So you've got these two characters that came out not that far out from each other that remove defense up in some way, and then they release another character that also does it. Don't really understand why they decided to do that. But then moving on from that, the character has a tap timing chain buff for fighters and shooters. So basically, if a fighter or a shooter character performs a good, a great, or a perfect, the chain will increase comparatively to what it was previously. So in normal circumstances, if you hit a perfect, your chain goes up by 0.3. What this does is that 0.3 from a perfect is buffed to 0.7, which makes your chain become a lot higher than what it normally would be. So it's obviously a good thing, and it does help supplement the fact that, you know, if you have to get through some certain effects, through certain tap timings, then this can help you, you know, bring back your chain a little bit. And it does make sense considering this character is focused on hitting as many perfects as possible as a captain to maintain that high attack multiplier. So the character has that, and that lasts for 3 turns, by the way, and it cannot be removed by your effects or the enemy effects. So being able to have that for multiple turns is always good. Moving on to one of the more important effects in her kit is that she has the ability to provide an orb boost for strength X and quick characters, and it is variable depending on the situation at hand. So whenever you activate the special, at a bare minimum, you're going to get a 3 times orb boost for strength X and quick characters for 1 turn. However, if you fulfill the condition of either having double stacking conditional boosts or at least 3 turns of tap timing bonus damage, when you activate the special, instead of the 3 times orb boost for 1 turn, it's going to be 3.5 orb boost for 3 turns, and it cannot be removed by the crew or enemy abilities. That's a very powerful effect to have. Being able to get the tap timing chain and that significant orb boost for multiple stages, and it can't be removed, is key. That's very, very good to have. The only real issue can arise is that providing that condition in order to get that can be difficult. Because, you know, double stacking conditional boosts, it's not super easy to get. And, you know, obviously Lucci and Luffy that came out recently, that character can provide that for you. But if you do use this character as a captain, this character gives 20 turns of tap timing bonus damage, which allows you to then use the special ability to get that to activate. However, if the enemy removes your beneficial effects at any point, that will remove the tap timing bonus damage. I really wish the tap timing and the captain ability could not also be removed by the crew enemy abilities. That would actually make quite a bit of difference, but you know, it just can be difficult to activate in certain circumstances. In more long form content, that's going to be a problem. In short form content, you could probably get that to activate without too many issues. So the special ability is fine. I just wish that there was another ability within the special that made use of the fact that as a captain, this character basically avoids all debuffs, and being able to remove those types of abilities from the rest of your crew, I think would have been a really neat component to have. And then finally, I guess we can just mention that she does have a rush. The rush, not really too much noteworthy stuff. You can just activate it, and it's a first tap rush as well, which is even better. And then the rush can provide up to a potential 1.9 times attack boost. Even at level 1, it's still pretty good. The 1.6 times maximum attack boost at level 1 is still quite good. And then if you go all the way to level 5, it goes to 1.9. So there's not that much of a difference personally. Like, obviously getting dupes of this character makes a big difference, but even at level 1, most Rush Sugo specials will provide a pretty substantial damage increase no matter what. So overall, I think S-Snake is just a perfectly fine legend, has some useful components that may be used in the future. The captain ability, being able to resist a bunch of debuffs, is definitely the most useful component, and then being able to potentially get a 3.5 orb boost for 3 turns and tap timing chain for 3 turns is also really cool. But that's going to wrap it up from me. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. And that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.